Hello crochet friends, this is Sylvia with Crazy Cool Crochet. Before we get started with today's project, which is the cool colorful crochet summer top, I want to show you what I've been up to. Something not crochet related, but so exciting. Well, for me anyway. And I hope you'll indulge me for just 1 minute. Hang on. Ta-da! So I did a thing. I wrote a book. This is actually my debut fiction novel. It's called Surviving the Day of Destruction, Apocalypse to New World Earth. And I cannot tell you how exciting this is. This has been years in the making. I'm talking years. I started writing this 8 years ago, and I got about halfway through with writing, and I hit a wall and put it away. Then, I'd pick it up every couple of years and, add a little something, but I just couldn't get the whole thing done. A year ago, I wrote another of the bigger sections, one of the most important parts. It turned out really good, and then I got stuck again. And just a couple of months ago, I finally finished it. And it was just published about a week ago. So it's out on Amazon if anybody's curious to see what in the world is going on with me. This is it. Purely fiction. This is all fiction. It's just my imagination run amok. But I would love it so much if you guys would, go over and take a peek. I will leave a link down in the white space below the video. So you can go over to Amazon and take a look for yourself. Okay, now let's get back to the real reason you're here. Thank you so much for indulging me. Now for this crochet summer top, we are going to be using Yarn Bee Sugarwheel Cotton. It's a number 3 lightweight or sport weight. And the hook is a G or 4.25 millimeter scissors, and that should do it. So we will be using 2 panels for the front and 2 panels for the back. So we'll pretend that this is the front. So what we are going to do is use the same stitch for both of these panels. It's the exact same stitch. The only difference is one is shorter and one is worked longer. And then all we do is turn the panel that way. And then we will seam up the center and then seam up the sides, leave the armhole openings, seam the shoulders, leave an opening for the neckline, and that's it. This is so easy and so much fun. And the weave is slightly open. It's a mesh stitch. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, for the smaller panel, the narrower panel, we are going to start with a chain of 37 for a size small. Now for different sizes, head over to the blog crazycoolcrochet.com, where I will place the written pattern. And of course this will also be available at my Etsy shop. And once again, I will have links for the Etsy shop, which by the way is called Crazy Cool Crochet US, as in United States. crazycoolcrochetus.etsy.com. Those links will be down in the white space below the video. You have to manually open that up. Okay, so for the first row, we're going to work a row of single crochets. And we skip that very first chain and start in the second chain with a regular single crochet. And a single crochet in each chain. When you get to the end, you'll have 36 single crochets. At the end of row 1, chain 3 and turn. And by the way, this is a cotton yarn. I did not mention that at the beginning. You can use pretty much any number 3 yarn. Cotton, of course, will be more comfortable for summer. Okay, now we are going to count that very first space under or next to that chain as the first space. So we're going to skip the first, skip the second, and do a single crochet into the next space. And then chain 2. Skip 2 spaces and single crochet in the next. Chain 2. This is a mesh stitch. Skip 2, single crochet. Or it's a variation on the mesh. 1, 2, skip 2, single crochet, chain 2, and repeat that all the way across until we get to the end. At the end of row 2, the mesh row, we end at the last 3 spaces or stitches. We'll skip 2 as usual, single crochet in the very last one. Now this time we chain 1 and turn. Now we will do a row of single crochets. Okay, so once again we're going to go into that very first single crochet. And then in the space we do 2 single crochets. Then in the next single crochet inside of it we do a single crochet. And then 2 in the space, and that's it. So repeat that across the row. 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets. At the end of row 3 with the single crochets, you enter your last 2 into that last space. And now we chain 3. And those are your repeat rows. The mesh row and the single crochet row. It's a 2-row repeat. And then we chain, or we turn. And by the way, you would have had 36 single crochets on that last row. Okay, so again, for the mesh row, we skip the first 2. Skip the space right under the chain. There's the second one. Into the next one, you do a single crochet for your mesh. Chain 2, skip 2. Chain 2, skip 2, single crochet in the next. And continue that across. When you get to the end, chain 1, turn, and then enter your single crochets, just like you did in the previous row. You will repeat those 2 rows until you complete 75 rows in total. And you will end on a single crochet row. And of course you make 2 identical panels. Now for the longer panel, we use the same stitch. The only difference, at the beginning there's going to be a little bit of a tweak. I couldn't get the math to work out for me. But remember my mantra, crochet is an art, not a science. So we make it work, and it did work. Now, the difference is, with the long panel, you start with a chain of 75. You do that first row of single crochets, where you start your single crochet in the second chain from the hook, work your way across. You will end up with 74 single crochets, chain 3 and turn. Then you will work your mesh row, exactly the same as you did before. The only place we're going to change things up is at the very end. When you get to the end of the very first mesh row, you will end up with 2 spaces rather than 3. So you will skip the 1 and then enter your last single crochet into the last stitch. Then you'll chain 1 and turn, and you'll continue with your single crochets exactly the same as before. So you enter the 1 single crochet and the single crochet, 2 single crochets in the space. All the way across. It will work out perfectly at the end, and you will end up with 75 stitches. And that's what you will be working all the way up. So follow the exact same pattern as for the previous panel. Make 2 of these, and then a single crochet row, and boom, you are good to go. Now for the long side, we would have worked for 39 rows. Okay, so like this, 39 rows. Now we're going to put the 2 panels together. and we want the wrong sides facing up. Okay, so this is the right side. Here is the tail from the foundation chain. So here's the foundation row. So this is the right side. We want the wrong side facing up. So do the same for this panel. Now we're going to seam the center first. So take a yarn needle and a length of yarn, match the color. So I'm using pink for pink. And before we go on, I want to remind you that YouTube has a new feature called Super Thanks. If you look below the video in the white space, you'll see a little icon and it says thanks. If you click that, it allows you to give me an extra thanks monetarily, where I call it a tip jar. So if you would like to leave me a little tip, $2, $5, $10, whatever you're comfortable with. If you like my tutorials and you want to support my work, remembering that you get all of this for free and it's so much work. So if you would like to help me out, I would be forever grateful. So down below where it says thanks. Okay, now let's move on. All right, so I like to get my two panels together like this. Okay, now I'm going to use just a regular whip stitch. So I already inserted the hook and the yarn into the cornermost stitches on both sides, and I did a regular knot, and I knotted it twice. So now you're just going to grab one strand on each panel, get all those stragglers out of the way, the tails. And this is all you're going to do, all the way up. All the way up to the neck. Okay, now watch for your panels. One might be longer than the other, so you're going to need to keep an eye on that and double up on some stitches or whatever you need to do to even it out. And then when you're done with the center panel, let me show you what that looks like. I should have said with the center stitch. Okay, so there's your neckline. There's the bottom. So then what you'll do is you will take the other two panels, place them one on top of the other. So this will be the right side. When you put the other one on there, you want the wrong side facing up so that the right sides are touching each other. And then you will seam the sides, determine the width of your armhole, whatever you prefer. So just sew up as far as you want. Also, if you would like, you can leave 3 or 4 inches open on the bottom. So you have like a little flap, a little opening. I kind of like that look. I think that's what I'm going to do. So then I will start seaming like from here up to my armhole opening. Do the same on the other side. And then we can do the shoulder seams. So for the shoulder, you determine the width of your neck. I usually use like an 8 or 9 inch opening here, and then seam these sides over here. Okay, now after you have done your seaming, shoulders, sides, centers, you will weave in your ends, all those little straggly tails, weave those in, hide them, and then as a finishing touch, we're going to add one row of single crochet around the neckline, and that'll do it. If you prefer, you can also add a row of single crochet around the armholes. I'm choosing not to do that. Take whatever color yarn you prefer. There's my neck opening. I typically start in a corner, or in a shoulder seam, I should say. Right side is facing you this time. pull the yarn through, and then do a chain 1 to lock that in. And now single crochet all the way around, as evenly spaced as possible. When you come back around to where you started, slip stitch into that first stitch. My stitches were kind of tight there. And then do a chain 1, cut off the yarn, leaving a tail, pull it through, squeeze it down, and then weave in the tail on the inside. Now, one last thing. For those of you who watched to the end, thank you so much. That actually means a great deal in the YouTube world. Watching videos as much as possible for as many minutes as possible is extremely important. So by staying to the end also, I'm going to give you some tips. So if once your panels are done and they end up looking wonky and it doesn't look like they're going to match up, keep in mind that yarn is very stretchy. You will be able to manipulate it when you're seaming so that they do match up. Also, a lot of that has to do with your tension. So many crocheters, including myself, because this happened to me with this project. I started one panel with my tension a little bit tighter, and then when I did the second panel, I was more relaxed, and I loosened up without even thinking about it, loosened up my tension. And when all was said and done, one panel was longer than the other, and I was like, uh-oh. But it's okay. It works out. As long as it's not, horribly skewed, it will work out once you seam it. So just keep that in mind. Watch your tension. Other than that, this is it, folks. Enjoy. Oh, don't forget to go over to Amazon. Check out my book, Surviving the Day of Destruction. And super thanks. Oh, I would appreciate so much if you guys would help me out with, contributing a little something to the tip jar. That'd be awesome. Other than that, okay, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for supporting my channel, and we'll see you on the next one.